My name is Oliver Pickard and I play with classic cars on some of the world's most beautiful roads for a living. That Porsche rear engine blood shining through. In 2020 I went to Retromobile Paris and saw some of the most exquisite, handmade, hand-finished and expensive cars on the planet. On returning home, the pandemic hit and I decided that the time for dreaming was done. I wanted to build my dream. I wanted to build the car that I had been designing since childhood. So with the help of my aerospace engineer and rallyist father, Andrew, we set about trying to find the perfect project. We found it rotting in a side yard in Normandy. Crashed, twisted, broken, buckled and fire damaged, a GTM. We dragged it home and tore it apart. Re-engineered from the ground up. Engine, suspension, fuel system, drivetrain, even the seating position. Everything. Bespoke, one of one. This is Project Mosquito. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, rather than yet another montage of cutting, welding and grinding, Dad finished this mount off camera. And you drilled it in the end, didn't you?
Yeah, just because it's more than strong enough, so might as well just make it lighter.
It's massively overbuilt. Someone posted a Chevron B18 on Facebook this morning, and in comparison, this thing's a tank. And you spent ages seam welding it all, didn't you?
Yep.
Which is completely unnecessary. Because like if you go out and check the suspension points on your own car, on your driveway, it's just spot welded all the way around and then seam sealed. Whereas Dad's taking it upon himself to completely seam weld it. And it's ridiculously strong.
Yeah,
isn't it?
but it's better being too strong than not strong enough.
He's even put a folded gusset inside the box. So it's like a gusset in a box in a thing. And it's super, super strong. So, for the first time, we're now going to mount all of our suspension up, well, this back bit, and show you what it'll look like.
Yep, let's get on it.
Oh, Dad made that mount smaller as well. He's like reinforced it and made it smaller, because last time we took the engine out, it kind of got stuck a bit. Now, that was somewhat our fault for not putting the wedge under the engine, because there's a wooden wedge that's supposed to fit under the sump to keep
it level,
to stop the engine moving. Well, the engine ain't level, that's kind of the problem. Because the engine's leant back, it rocked forward, but that should help clearance as well. So it's lighter and it's stronger and all of that. So, oh, and thanks to my friend Anthony and someone in the Alps hitting a post, we've got parts as well. So we're going to show you all of that and paint. Right, let's fit some suspension up, shall we?
Yep.
Do you want to take the weight, or do you want to put the nuts in? Now, these uprights and this suspension arm, being from a 1,500 kilo crossover, will be lightened as well. We've been looking at them, and they're massively overbuilt for our application, of course. So these will be getting lighter as well, although they're not dissimilar to the weight of the mini parts, are they?
No.
The upright is actually lighter than the mini upright.
It's such a big lump.
Mm-hmm. Honda was quite good at kind of hollowing bits out and stuff, but still, there's quite a bit that can be improved.
Very good, eh?
Dummy wheel bearing in. And our hub. So there we go. That is our suspension setup. Now we haven't made the spacers yet for the shock absorber on the bottom, and we're going to drill the bushes out on the shocks to 12mm, just for extra strong mounting. But that is one heck of a little suspension setup, isn't it? few people who haven't watched the old videos don't know what hubs these are. These hubs are insane shafts, hubs from America, and they're designed to use Type R shafts, so the same kind of diameter shaft that you get on a DC2 Integra Type R or an Ep3 Type R, all the cars that you basically don't get in America, without using a 5-stud pattern. And the reason we're not using a 5-stud pattern is because of our little wheels, because our wheels are 14-inch wheels. The discs are from a base model Ep3, because a base model Ep3 uses the 4x100 stud pattern and 14-inch wheels. So our wheels and our brakes will fit because we're going to use the calipers as well from an Ep3 base model. So basically, Honda went to the trouble of designing a 4x100 bolt pattern disc brake system on the base model Civic just so that we could fit our wheels, which is rather nice of them. I haven't ordered the calipers yet though, but I can't wait. Right, now then, my friend Anthony was here the other day. You may have seen me driving his Peugeot in a previous video. And he brought me something that I bought off him in 2020. In fact, it was the first thing I bought for this car. And he's had them sat in his garage ever since, waiting for me to give him money. So we have a box of brackets, which we're not going to use because look at the size of that. We're not I think if I bolted something as complete and holeless as that into the Mosquito, Dad would have a fit. So won't be using those, although they are very nice bolts, and very nice bolts are hard to get hold of, so that's awesome. And we have some seat sliders. Now, a few of you may recognize these seat sliders. And these were referred to by my father as unacceptably heavy, as most things are. These are Lotus Elise Mark I bucket seats. They are incredibly light. They aren't the covers that we're going to use eventually, but they are actually quite smart. They're in pretty good shape, actually. A little bit of a tidy up and they'd be fine, but we are going to recover them, we're thinking. Although it seems a shame because this leather's lovely quality. And they're going like that. And we have two. Now, these seats are super, super lightweight. They're not carbon. I think they're fiberglass, but they are really beautiful quality, being Lotus. And also being Elise Mark I, they're pretty much the lightest bucket seats you can get without spending a lot of money. And if you've looked at bucket seats, they are hideous money. And they're lovely. They're so comfy. When we got these, I sat in the sun in here one day, and I almost fell asleep in the bucket seat. They have inflatable lumbar support, like you'll find in some Corvettes and stuff. And that's a little lumbar pillow here that just inflates. And me being a long, skinny guy, some seats hit me in the wrong place, so I was slightly nervous about these. But they're beautifully comfy. I've never sat in a Mark I Lotus Elise. I've only ever sat in a Mark I Exige and a Mark II Exige. So I didn't know whether they'd be just right, but oh my goodness, they're lovely. They're nicer than the Mark II seats that I've sat in. They're absolutely lovely. And I am going to recover them. Like I say, the reason being that they're dark. They're a bit drab, aren't they? And this car being as small as it is, I don't want it to be like the Abyss in there. I don't want it to just be this dark hole. I hate dark interiors in cars. It's just not acceptable to me. And although the leather on these is lovely, surviving having been in Anthony's garage for 2 years, they are going to be recovered. So this isn't their final form, but I couldn't be happier with them. However, we do have a slight issue. Now, the slight issue is, and this is one of those things that you don't know until you get all the parts, because you don't know until you get all the parts. It's not like you can get all the dimensions of all the things online and draw it out. It's just not going to all make sense until you got it in front of you. And basically what happens is, I bet you can see it already, But when I'm sat in this seat, with it in the correct position, my head, when I'm wearing a helmet, is too close to this bar. Now, that's good news in a way. And what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to notch the ladder section in the middle of the chassis, and we're also going to have to bring in the center tunnel. So we're going to have to notch it in there. Not massively, but we are going to have to do it. That's a good thing because it brings the weight of me more central in the car. It's a funny old thing because we didn't actually need this center tunnel at all. We could have just got away with like a Lotus style rib that's just a folded piece of steel that ran down the center of the car. But I wanted a center console because when I'm driving a long way, I like to have somewhere to put my elbow. And I wanted somewhere where we could run all the coolant lines and stuff like that and have insulation. And obviously that takes room because we've got coolant lines, we have fuel lines, we've got all sorts running through this center section. So I wanted the center tunnel and I wanted it to be like a GTM. It will still be like a GTM, but it will be like a GTM that I can be in safely. And my head won't be anywhere near this bar because the top of the roof on a GTM is very narrow. And there is a space here, but that's great because that gives me room for my arm as well. And I might even be able to have an armrest on the door. The ultimate of luxuries, having two armrests so I can actually just nicely relax. I can do the French thing and rest my arm on the door as I'm driving. But it's so exciting. It's awesome to have parts. It's awesome to have these seats, which, like I said, these were the first thing that I bought for this car. Now, the reason I found these seats from Anthony like I did was because way before I bought Mosquito, at a certain point, I was offered an Mx5. And I rang Anthony up and I said, Anthony, you used to own an Mx5, you've driven them all, will I fit? Because being as tall as I am and being as broad as I am, I didn't know. And Mx5s are famous for being a bit pokey inside. And Anthony said, well, kind of, yes. You will fit, but you won't be comfy for a long period of time. He said, what a lot of Mx5 owners do is they fit Lotus seats, and I still have the Lotus seats that I bought from my Mx5 and never fit. And I'm like, oh. And I kind of stored that bit of information in the back of my mind. They weren't for sale, he just offered them to me. And then when I bought this, I'm like, I'm going to need seats. Anthony! And so I actually managed to get him to deliver them, which was amazing of him. So thank you, Anthony. And I'm thrilled. They couldn't be better. Also, recently, a man in the Alps hit a post. And that's excellent news for us. And here's why. Many of you know that I've struggled to find suspension components and parts this entire build. And it's been made worse by the price of scrap going up. So every time cars go into a scrapyard here in France lately, they just get scrapped instantly. And when I wanted CRV suspension, I rang around basically every single scrapyard in France to try and get it. It took me ages. Mx5 parts equally. I got the uprights from, or the knuckles if you're American, from someone who does drifting on Facebook. And they bought new uprights for drifting for their truck car, and I'm like, can I buy your uprights? Can I buy your uprights? So I got those ages ago, but I only had one upper arm. Recently, when I got a notification on Le Bon Coin that there was a guy scrapping a NB, which is a Mark II MX5, I gave him a call very, very quickly. And I got these big stainless bolts. Are they stainless? I don't know. They're coated. There's something cool. Super flipping expensive. They're like 20 quid for that bolt. And I got a big box of stuff. It's really heavy. Now then, in the big box of stuff, there is MX5 brakes. Now, many of you will know that the Mark I MX5 had 14-inch wheels. These are Mark I early Mark II disc brakes, but these are the big ones. Now, even though a lot of people say that you can't use the standard 14-inch wheels with the 1.8 brakes, I hear from some people in America who do autocross that if you use spacers, you can even fit 13s with these big brakes. Now, I don't know about that, but we shall try. Because I don't want to use spacers. And if I've done my maths right, I don't have to use spacers. So I got from the guy 2 front brake calipers, I got the upper arms, I got the discs, which are like brand new, they've even got no pads in. And these upper arms, because they're the later ones, have the bracket for the brake line in them, which is cool, compared to the early ones, which don't. See? In fact, these later ones are a bit stronger. I don't know if you can see that. They have a little bit more reinforcement in them. So, because that's NA and that's NB. They're the exact same arm as far as geometry, although the actual setup's different, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that, I've said this in my Mx5 suspension video, but a lot of people who have the early cars, the Mark 1 cars, use the Mark 2 geometry when they go to big wheels. Now, a lot of people have doubted me with these wheels and these brakes, that they won't fit and that they won't clear. But if I've got my maths right, they should. Fortunately, Mx5 guys are quite good with their information. We've got some wheel nuts, Dad. Now then, let's play Will It Spin? If it hits and it grinds, then it's obviously rubbing. But ladies and gentlemen, she spins. No wheel spacers, no nothing. It is tighter than a gnat's chuff, but it does indeed spin. And I'm a very, very happy boy. Now then, these brakes are the big brakes for the NB Mx5. They are from the 1.8. They were also offered on the 1.8 NA Mx5 as well, but they are the big brakes that came on the Mx5. Now, an Mx5 NB weighs as near as makes no difference 1,000 kilos. And our little car is going to weigh 620 kilos, which is a difference of 380 kilos, which is like, I don't know, your average, the weight of your average French family. So this car will stop much, much easier than, than an MX5 will. Not only that, but the weight in our car is far, far lower. And so the weight is in line with the suspension arms and with the wheels itself. And so that makes it easier to slow down as well. So these standard MX5 brakes will, well, not really the standard ones, they are the bigger brakes from the more powerful car. But these MX5 brakes, which are quite sought after, because a lot of the 1.6 guys who do track days and stuff like to hunt down these brakes to get better brakes. But they should be incredibly strong. And that's one of the problems with this car, is that we could actually over brake it. We can give it too much brake, and that's an issue. I looked at the Willwood brakes for this car, but the Willwood brakes for this car, the stopping distance is exactly the same and the weight is the exact same. The only difference is that on an MX5, they heat up more to the standard brakes, and the Willwood brakes say that they last longer. That's the Willwood Little Big Brake Kit. But these are the same weight and they stop in the same distance, and because we are so much lighter, we aren't putting as much heat into the brakes because we don't have to use the brakes as much, and because we have better suspension and better shock absorbers, we have less unsprung mass, we have more grip and less weight. So we won't be putting as much heat through them anyway, so there's no point spending €1,000 on a brake kit. This is perfect. And it's factory, meaning that I can go to any car parts place or I can go online and just order brake pads. The only downside for these over a monoblock caliper is actually changing brake pads to like track pads, but I won't be doing that much anyway because this is a road car. So I'm very, very happy. Quite literally, oh, it's all oily to stop it rusting. But the brake disc itself is brand new. And I bought them for the price of the discs. Like if I'd bought discs new online, I would have paid as much as I paid for all of this, which is one heck of a deal. And it just goes to show that it's easy to go out and just buy parts. But if you actually take a minute and you spend a bit of time searching, and sometimes it takes a lot of searching, you can find something that's perfect. The only downside to this is this top arm and what happens when I put a coilover in. So here I have a standard factory Mx5 coilover, and it is a coilover. And you'll see that the body of the coilover is on the bottom. So all of the weight of the shock is on the wheel, not on the chassis. So that adds to the unsprung mass. Whereas our nice EMC coilover is that wheel. And so all of the body hangs off the chassis and doesn't add to the weight on the wheels, which is great news. Because more unsprung mass means that your car's heavier, but it also means that it turns worse, it stops worse, it accelerates worse. Like, unsprung mass is the enemy, and anywhere we can cut that down is better. So not only do these weigh half as much as these, but they also have far less unsprung mass. The problem comes with the fact that these are triple tube shock absorbers, and they are pretty thick. And because she's thick, when we put it in the arms, now this isn't the final geometry, unfortunately. This little bracket here is just to hold it for me. But when you put it in here, you will notice very quickly that it doesn't fit. This hole is too small. And my shock's just too thick for this tiny little hole, and that's an issue. This is one of those problems with building your own car and not being able to measure parts before you get them, because there's no measurements online for like the size of this window and the size of this arm versus the size of this spring on the outside diameter. Like, EMC will tell you the inside diameter of the spring so you can get new springs, but they won't tell you the outside because it's just not there. And then you don't know your angle, and then when you're on your angle, obviously a cylinder on an angle is an oval, and so that makes that bigger and it doesn't fit. So these are things that we are going to have to sort out, and just like the seats, you don't know until you have the parts in front of you, but at least now we know. Now, for those in the comments asking about my steering, I'm not going to be using an MX5 steering rack. The reason for that is I don't want power steering. This car is so light that any power steering would just be massively over boosted. It'd be like a Cadillac, you'd be able to turn the wheel with one finger. There's just not enough weight on the tyres to require power steering. And this car isn't designed for track use anyway, it's designed for driving pleasure. And so I'm going to be using a mini rack because it's true to the original GTM, and I've got one. But mini racks are really economic to buy. They're available in every single steering ratio known to man because they are tracked, they are rallied, they are auto tested, which if you've never seen auto test, it's a bit like autocross, but it's done in like a pub car park. So like it's the world's smallest, tightest circuit. And so they basically want either 2.2 turns lock to lock or even less. So mini racks are available in every single ratio known to man, which is great because in a mid-engine car, you want a really quick ratio. And I'm not going to be parallel parking this car much anyway. I live in a place where we don't really parallel park, or it's all like end in, it's like America. A lot of people have been saying, because I've got slightly stretched tyres, oh, the edges of your rims when you parallel park. It really doesn't matter. I don't parallel park it. And we don't have curbs either. But I will be using a very quick steering rack as well because a mid-engine car needs it. And if this car ever does start to slide, I want to be able to catch it. And a fast rack will help that. And like I said, a mini rack is about half the price of an MX5 rack, and I've already got one. So I'm going to be using an upside down right-hand drive mini steering rack because that's what I've got upstairs. And it's the steering rack that originally came in the GTM body. So it's quite nice to use that. It's one of the few mechanical parts that I actually got for this car, so I want to use it. Right, let's talk roll cage coating, shall we? Now, many of you have been asking whether we're going to powder coat the roll cage, and we're not going to powder coat it. Reasons being, we are incredibly rural, and there isn't anywhere that does powder coating. But not just that, powder coating is very thick, and it's very hard to inspect something once it's been powder coated. Yeah,
basically, so if for some reason you had a slight off, and you wanted to inspect the chassis and the roll cage after, and there's a tiny fracture anywhere, with powder coating, you can't see it.
It's not just that. If you have a chip powder coating, it's a nightmare. You've got to sandblast the entire thing back again and then re-powder coat it from scratch. You can't really touch it up or anything.
No.
It's awful stuff. It's tough, but when it does get damaged or chipped or scratched, it looks terrible. And so what we're going to use is...
This is Steelit.
It's an American product, isn't it?
Yeah. So basically it's very, very finely ground 316 stainless steel. They grind it to a powder and then they mix it with a polyurethane top coat. And basically, so it makes it super rust proof and super tough and really hard wearing. That's to use it on Baja buggies.
Like trophy trucks and all sorts. Super cool.
If it's good enough for them, it's got to be good enough for the Mosquito.
I think it was originally designed for architecture, but it's now become like the thing to use on like Baja and desert races, because at the end of the day, they can inspect the chassis, and if it has cracked or whatever, they can actually weld straight on top of it because it's stainless steel. It's super cool.
Yeah. So we've never used it before, so we're going to give it a test run.
And many of you know that I detest the undersides of cars being black, or anywhere that's kind of a section of a car that gets put in shade, because you can't see when you work on it. It drives me nuts.
Yep.
And so we're going to use grey.
This is steel grey. This is basically the colour of satin stainless steel.
Yeah, it's stainless. And what we will do eventually, all of the uprights, all of the suspension arms, all of the roll cage will all be Steelit grey. But for today, we're just going to paint this mount, aren't we?
Yeah. So before it has a chance to go rusty inside, which is what we want to avoid, otherwise we're going to have to sandblast it, and it's a pain. Because sandblasting, it's dirty, you've got to spend ages cleaning it after.
Especially with box sections like
so
this,
if we can do
just
it now,
traps it.
If we can do it now before it goes rusty, all the better. So yeah, let's crack on.
Yeah, and you're going to brush paint it, yeah?
Yeah.
Not spray it.
Yeah, I'm going to try it. So because basically if you can brush paint it and get a decent finish, then anybody can use it. I can then recommend it to other people. So if you don't have a compressor and a spray gun, which we do, but this is sort of the test.
Also, because it's full of holes, if you spray it, it just ends up going out all the holes, and you get more kind of behind the mount than on the mount.
Yeah.
So
and it's expensive.
Yeah.
So the last thing we want to do is fill the garage full of Steelit's paint.
Yeah, so because Steelit say you can brush paint it, Dad wants to try it. Now, we're not going to be painting the uprights or suspension arms today, because they all still have to be lightened. But I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be cool.
So what we need to do is line all this up, get rid of as much unsprung weight as we can, which will help the handling of the car. And even the shockers, the coilovers being upside down. So the body of the shock absorber is actually bolted to the car, so it is less unsprung weight.
A lot of WRC shocks and stuff like that work like this. They are inverted, and these being off-road coilovers, that's how they work. And it's cool, they've got progressive damping as well, so they're nice and soft. If you watched last week's video, when I was compressing the last episode where I was compressing the shock absorber, I really struggled with that last little bit with like all my force, and that's because of the damping of the shock absorber, which should give us a really plush ride. These EMC shocks are what they call triple tube. Triple tube, you know, like they do like a monoshock and then like a twin tube damper. Well, these are triple tube, being French and weird and cool, and that is designed for comfort in your desert racing vehicle. That's literally what EMC say. To maximise comfort. Trust the French to want to maximise comfort in a desert racing shock absorber. But I can't actually wait to see what these are like, because I've never been in a vehicle using EMC shocks, and they are very, very special. I don't think I'm actually made it plain like how awesome these are. Because these are as cool as like Orleans or whatever. Because they're completely made in-house in France from materials that are French materials. Like EMC are like super, super French and super obsessive. And EMC shocks have been on Paris-Dakar vehicles and all sorts.
Right, it's always a good idea to decant your paint from the original can into something else, because what happens if you take it straight from the can, you keep dipping in, and any dust that you pick up on your brush ends up back in your can and contaminates all your paint. So I'll take a little bit off now for now. It sticks to fingers.
You're going to clean the cage gasket off?
I've done it. Yeah. Already wiped down the cage, cleaned it all up with acetone, so there's no greasy fingerprints or oil from anywhere. Let's give it a whirl. Okay, so I'll brush this a little bit, and I don't like it. It's very brush marky.
Yeah.
Even with a super fine brush like this, you can see the brush marks in it, and it doesn't lie flat at all. So basically, we're going to get the spray gun out.
So I'm cleaning up a load of Steelit. They do say that spraying is preferred, and I can see why now, because it would seem like the stainless steel gathers on the brush, in the bristles of the brush, and it's a bit very streaky because you get streaks of stainless in the polyurethane. Luckily, we've got all the compressor and stuff set up because we thought this might be the case, but it's always worth trying. Being able to brush paint it would have been great, because obviously there are some very hard to get areas, but it is what it is. Well, our first time spraying Steelit, and much was learned. It's not perfect by a long shot. We laid it on way too thick. It's old stuff to spray. It requires a lot more air pressure than you think to pick up the stainless steel. And I'm really happy with the colour. It's super sparkly and nice. I like that. We did lay it on too thick, so there is a couple of places that are a bit cellulite, and there's a run right there, but don't look at that. But I'm really happy with it. It lays on really finely. And what we should have done is we should have given it a spray, even though it's thick stuff. We should have given it like a light coat, and then we should have waited, and then we should have given it heavier coats after that. But this is just like one really thick coat, and it's okay. But we will flat it back, which is one of the beauties of Steelit. Apparently you can do this. I've seen tests where people have done it, but they were using rattle cans, and obviously this is thicker because it's not in a rattle can. But you can flat it back with 220 grit sandpaper apparently, and then go over it, and you can't even see like joins or anything like that. So I'm not worried about like this centerline mark and stuff like that at all. It will all lay down flawlessly in the end. But I'm quite happy with it. It was a good test, and I think it's important to test it at this point. And of course, we've got plenty of paint inside the box sections, and that's what really matters. But first time spraying stainless steel, first time spraying any sort of polyurethane product, so it's a learning curve. But I'm really happy with the colour. What do you think? Tell me down in the comments below. Should I have gone for blue or yellow or white or whatever? I know it's the exact same colour as this, but do you like the colour? And of course, we've had seats and all that. Do you like the seats? What colour interior do you think I should do? Tell me all down in the comments below. I always love reading your comments. They're always like really inspiring and awesome. So thank you all for watching. If you'd like to support this channel, don't forget to subscribe, click the like, bell icon. That bell icon is super, super important. You are actively helping me build this car by participating. So thank you. And please be awesome to each other. There's some extra videos there. And of course, you can click on my face to subscribe. Thank you all for watching. Please be awesome to each other. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.